Okay, so now on to our program, Beautiful and Lovely, the life and music of Don Voegeli. And I also want to recognize our speaker will be coming up. That is Mr. Begley's son, but I wanted to recognize his daughter as well, Julie Martinson. So today's speaker is Jim Voegeli, son of Don Voegeli, who was a member of our club for 50 years and served as our pianist for 35 of those years. Don's life was about music, and he spent his career at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Don created National Public Radio's All Things Considered theme music that is played for over 40 years. Jim, who is a graduate of UW-Madison with both undergraduate and law degrees, has been practicing law for almost 30 years, with the last 16 as in-house counsel for 3M Company as their Assistant Chief Intellectual Property Counsel. Jim, we look forward to your presentation, and we have made a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund as a thank you for speaking to us today. And as a reminder, as we welcome you to the podium, that if you have questions, if time allows, please wait for the audience mics.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you so much. It's great to be here with you. I think my father would be so pleased that we're thinking of him today. He loved Rotary. He was a member of your club, as you know, for 50 years, and your pianist for 35. And then Jeff Bartell took over. And Jeff, you've got to have probably close to that or more than that. I don't know. But he's chewing food, so he's going to plead the fifth. But so I have very little time to cover his life, and I have 5 minutes of audio we want to play for you. So let me just mention my relief valve is that we have a program that's airing on Wisconsin Public Television over the last several weeks. David Null is here, director of the UW Archives, and he and I did a presentation that we taped last November. And that's you can see that on the website at any time for the next 2 years. Let's hope they don't pull it early, David. But it's there, and I'll show you how to get to that at the end. So there's a lot more music, a lot more information on that program. I'm going to briefly talk about Rotary, the stuff that we know, which isn't a whole lot, but I can give you some information. Then I'll talk about his life very quickly. I'll talk about our project that we've just touched on it. For the last 4 years, we realized a lot of his tapes and music has been destroyed and lost, even that which is the National Public Radio early versions. They threw them away and so on. So we were able to, we've done a search and rescue effort, and I want to then tell you just briefly about that. We have some CDs we'd like to give you for those of you don't have one for everybody here, but we can certainly get them for anyone who has interest. And then I'll welcome and thank some people here who have helped. So first of all, he became a member in 1949. He was sponsored by Professor Edgar B. Pop Gordon, who was very famous professor at the University of Music, and he had a radio show. And by the way, I'm going to refer to WHA, and I mean Wisconsin Public Radio. That would be what you'd say today, but back then it was WHA, still the hub for the network, and then it was the Wisconsin Educational Radio Network and became Wisconsin Public Radio. But I'll just refer to WHA as the generic for everything. So he had a show on WHA Radio that was beamed into the schools. It was called Journeys in Music Land. And my father got to know him because he would accompany him around the state to do concerts for the school kids to get them. They were very popular concerts, I'm told, and he got to know him. So actually he was playing for Rotary before he was inducted with Pop Gordon. He also served played piano for Warren Woolridge, Ray Dvorak, Norm Clayton, we're going to hear in just a few moments, Sam Jones, and others. He retired from Rotary in '84, and Jeff stepped up to the plate, thank you. He was on the board of directors a couple times and was vice president. He was awarded the Paul Harris Award, the Rotary Service Award, and the Joseph Werner Meritorious Award. And when he received that in '84, Stuart Sears wrote, and this is in your newsletter, There are few whose service to this club can be compared with Don's. There are none who are more deserving of the honor than he. It is appropriate when Don retires at the end of this year that he's played 1,800 performances, that he knows how much we value his contributions. So do I have a clicker? I guess. Second shelf. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. And thank you. Jane's going to play the sound clips when we get to that. This is a 2001 photo of him. So now let me quickly tell you, this is we think, a 1937 photo when he graduated from high school. He grew up in Monticello, just 30 miles away, was born in 1920, and he participated in the UW summer music camp and loved playing the vibes. And he was awarded one of the first music scholarships during the Depression and got to come to the UW as a result. He was volunteering right away as a sophomore at WHA, doing various things, so they got to know him. And he was hired upon graduation as a musician, and then the year later became music director, which he did from 1942 to 1964. And he did a lot of writing of music for productions, and which is something that's not typical of a, quote, music director today. It's at public stations. So he did a lot of things. But he had a technical background, too. He was a very good engineer. He was operations and facility manager from 1964 to 1967. He was a special assistant to the director of media at UW when they were building Vilas Hall. For 3 years, helped plan the Vilas Hall studio layouts and so on. And then he was technical director for the National Center for Audio Experimentation, which experimented in binaural stereo. I'll show you a little slide in a few minutes of that. But they did radio productions, plays, and that became Earplay, which was a renowned production distribution throughout the country. You would hear Earplay plays on all public stations. And then he did his electrosonic studio where he did electronic music. But Ken Ost, the head engineer, liked to work with my father, that he would go and be the engineer for UW athletic events. And there's a story Ken used to tell that's in Randall Davidson's book, 9XM, where it was the press banquet the night before a Purdue-Wisconsin game, and it was dragging on. He went over to play the piano. It went so well. He had all these singers for hours. And finally, a Purdue coach came up to Ken and said, "We'll trade you right now a linebacker and defensive end for that piano player." So, and bear with me, I had heart surgery 10 weeks ago, so I'm just back to work Monday, and my mind isn't quite back all the way. So up at Mayo Clinic, I had an aortic aneurysm repair and a new heart valve, so bear with me. I want to do justice to my father, but I only have limited time. I'm told there's a hook that comes out. So let's get to our first sound clip. Oh, no, this is 1949, the pipe organ in Studio A, and he would play interstitials, which means they're going to take you to the top of the hour. That's how it was in old radio. It was used in productions. The WNYC in New York discovered last year in the New York Public Library some wonderful transcription discs of a documentary that he did that is so timely today, still 1948, he played the organ. It was distributed throughout the country, and it was about all the prejudice and racial bias and bias against immigrants, and a brilliant play that we have now got in the archives. And then he did Organ Melodies, a show that he did daily. He'd play some standards and then finish with something that he improvised. This is Norm Clayton, who used to be up here leading you. And the replacement for that program, Journeys in Musicland, was called Let's Sing. It was as popular among adults as it was kids. It was beamed into the schools at 1:30 on Wednesday afternoon. And Beautiful and Lovely is from 1964. It's a song my father wrote about the beauty of nature and life for kids. And we're going to just listen to a little bit of it.
Beautiful and lovely things to see. I'm thankful things, such lovely things for me. Skies and clouds, sunsets, trees with birds that sing, butterflies and babies, flowers in the spring, beautiful and lovely things to see.
Here's a picture, probably doing a Wisconsin School of the Air production. It could have been College of the Air, but this is probably Wisconsin School of the Air. Claire Kensler in the background, wonderful person. Julie's here, and we got to know these people. You know, it was like WHA was a close-knit family, so Claire I remember very well. Carl Schmidt in the foreground. Here he is in the master control room at WHA where everything goes out to the network, and he's behind is Studio C. This is Old Radio Hall. He also had an orchestra, some of you may remember, I don't know, 1941 to 1951 at least, may have been a little longer. This is when it was a 15-piece ensemble, so this is after World War II with a singer. And I just want to play a little bit. This is a Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, the Wallace Willis song from 1862, but just listen to how good this band was. So that's our oldest recording in the collection. That's 1949. WKOW was a CBS affiliate back then, and they taped it, and we were able to get the tape from them. It was a transcription disc, probably originally. We're very grateful for that. He later had a sextet, and then he had the Don Voegeli Trio, and they used to play at the Edgewater Hotel on weekends. He was very involved with Hare's Foot, and this is an annual production. If you didn't know what it is, I stopped around the 1964 or so, but it goes way back to the turn of the century. And he was the music director for many years of that. And in this particular case, Good for the Girls, our second oldest recording, the only recording, David, right? The only recording of its era, nothing before that. And we think then it's only 1963 that they have another recording. So this was done on transcription disc with a single mic above the orchestra pit. And we don't have time, I can only play you a few things, but they wrote this play and all the music and lyrics in less than a month before the competition deadline. They were apparently had typists typing the script within an hour of the deadline. So they won, and it's a really interesting music. He took a leave of absence for 2 years, which spanned 1957 to 1959. The J. Walter Thompson ad agency in Chicago found out about him, and his jingle, he asked him to submit a jingle for Schlitz Beer, 1956. He won that competition, and that was the national campaign. And then in 1957, the year later, they did another jingle. This is an actual photo of that session. You're going to hear it in a moment. This is my father conducting, and Jamie Silva is the singer. And this was very significant insofar it was on national radio, but it was on national television. The Schlitz Playhouse of the Stars aired every week, and this was the jingle.
Move up to quality. Move up to Schlitz.
Here's how to get refreshing lightness, flavor,
That ought to sell beer.
taste. Move up to Schlitz. Light Schlitz.
You owe it to yourself to enjoy the best. Schlitz is one of the finer things of life that everybody can afford. Move up to quality. Move up to Schlitz, world's bestseller at any price.
The beer that made Milwaukee famous, have a glass. You will get the kiss of the hops in every glass. Ask for the beer that's so refreshing. Flavor, quality, modern taste. Move up to Schlitz. Up, move up to Schlitz.
Yeah. Thank you. So now we're going to hear Continental Airlines, 1959. Jamie was a beautiful voice, Jay's with Jamie. He also did Bonnie Herman and the Singers Unlimited. But Jamie, this is the full ensemble. They took one of the first airlines to take delivery of the 707.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful,
Wonderful, wonderful.
what a wonderful flight when you travel as guest on the most experienced jet line in the West. Golden Jet's the way to fly. It's time to try Continental Airlines.
So I'm only playing 2 examples. There's about 70 national spots, including some wonderful dog commercial spots that you can see on the Wisconsin Public. You can see one of them on the show we did. I want you to know he did this for mainly about 8 years. He did it a little longer, tapered down. He didn't make much money on this, so he died with a very modest estate. Luckily, he had the university pension. He would get paid a certain amount. He would have to go hire all the musicians. This is before multi-track recording, so it all had to be done correctly, everybody in the room one time, and he put a lot into it, and he often made very little money. In fact, he did the Arlene Francis show theme. He didn't record it, but we only got paid $100 by the production company. That was in 1957, NBC's third daily. They had the Today Show, Tonight Show, and Arlene Francis show. There's a letter in our collection from the producer of he did a wonderful film score for a promotional film, Chicago City That Cares, in 1966, his last film that he did. And there's an apology. We couldn't pay you much because we didn't budget for music. So he didn't, musicians are often taken advantage of, and he didn't make a lot of money. But the musicians did quite well. These are wonderful musicians. I remember going to a couple sessions. They would play it twice, and then they would record it. They're that good. And they do this all day long. Chicago was the hub for jingle recording at Universal Recording. And they would get paid a royalty as well as the recording fee. So this is 1970. He's the National Center for Audio Experimentation doing one of those plays. John Tideman from the BBC along with Carl Schmidt. And we asked Carl to write something for our project, and unfortunately, tragically, he died. I remember talking to him a few months before he died, and he says, you don't have to send me the drafts. I'm going to be around a long time. Well, he died in April, and we finally came up with a CD in fall. He says, best friend, admired artist, we have been together professionally and personally for more than 50 years, but more than that, we have been in sync too long to split now. You are still in my vicinity, playing softly on the keyboard. We were together when your first child died, together when my first child died, when our kids were born, when we helped found NPR. We lived our lives then and now. This shows the close relationships that people had at WHA, but it also talks about the tragedy in my father's life. My parents lost their first 2 children, Donna at the age of 2.5 to leukemia. Bobby at the age of 5 had an adverse reaction to anesthesia at UW Hospital, having a hernia repair. And then my mother died when I was 10 at the age of 44. She was very sick for 4 years before that. Dad had to take on both parental roles. And then later, another wife died of cancer, Anne. And then he had ankylosing spondylitis. For some of you who do remember him, he was kind of hunched over, and that got worse as he got older. The sudden onset of that in the 20s is very painful, and that's actually what took his life when he fell at the age of 89 in 2009. Here's another 1970 photo. The BBC had come and done a workshop on sound effects and left this little Putney synthesizer, and he bought the keyboard, and this was used to do the first All Things Considered theme and music package, and that's on the show. We don't have time to listen to it, but this and the Moog synthesizer that he later had were monophonic instruments. You could only get one note at a time. If you played a chord, you'd get the lowest note. So you needed a multi-track tape machine. If you'd have to do 3 passes and play each of the chord notes separately to build a chord. So a lot of work went into it. This is a telegram. This is before email. This is before texting. And we got along perfectly fine. a message from Linda Wertheimer, how delighted they are on one of those little music bridges that he did. This was for a consumer theme, and it's on that little synthesizer, so I want to play it for you. Can hardly remember a cash register, but that was a cute thing. They loved it. And now we're going to play a little bridge from 1974. So to bridge between news segments, you need something, and he did lots of happy, sad, anything. But this is one of my favorites. And we'll just listen to a little bit of it. So we'll move on in the interest of time. Should fade out. I'll move it on. So this is the original sheet music. I just gave it to David last night. Some more materials for the archives. This is 1974. He wrote the current theme, the second theme for All Things Considered. So actually his music has been, ever since they went on the air, 1971, so we're at 46 years, his music has been their theme, as well as he did other NPR themes of shows that no longer exist. This one, I'm going to play you just a little bit of the electronic version, synthesized version, and later we'll listen to his last arrangement. This is the one still he used. He also did Options, Voices in the Wind. He did a signature for Minnesota Public Radio, American Public Media, and Voice of America used his music too. We'll get to that in a moment. But we'll listen to this. This is what you may have heard in 1976. That's the radio signal. That would go on a little longer. And it would go on. This is the Moog synthesizer, and Mike Crane's here, and I'm going to talk about you a little bit in a moment more, but Mike has this office now, and that again is a monophonic instrument. So Neil Cohn of National Public Radio interviewed him a few years into retirement, and he said it took 2.5 weeks to put that, what you were just listening to, that music thing, to layer it up. That may have included the time to write it, I don't know, but it took 2.5 weeks just to do that much. Let's listen to his, he did, copyright law was onerous on public stations, so they would have to pay a lot of money for commercial music. So he did 26 records of production music for stations, 17 were his own music, and the rest were other musicians. 96 to 97% of all public radio and TV stations use some or all of his music, including the Voice of America, which I'm about to get to. But this is his last arrangement, his own orchestral arrangement. He's playing the electric piano. And listen to the bridge. He loved the bridge. He told Neil Cohn he was so happy. You'll hear a little bit of the bridge, which comes after the main theme. Nope, we got to play. There we go. There's the bridge. So that tape was lost, National Public Radio threw out these tapes, and we had to go to LP that was a very bad pressing, 1980, to use decrackling, declicking software, and then manually edit out any additional artifacts to preserve that, to get that back. And Mike Crane, bless your heart, took it back to National Public Radio, and they now have some of their old stuff again, which they could use if they wanted to. Here's 1978 photo. I just like this one. It's him scoring music in the Electrosonic studio. I mentioned the Voice of America. We don't have time to play it here, but it's on the show. They used his music, and they have Yankee Doodle. If you listen today, and they're actually listened to more than ever today, by the way. So this is not an old, rusty institution. And they're very credible on their news. They're very careful about their news. And Yankee Doodle is their theme. So at the top of the hour, 1974, 1976, he had 2 Yankee Doodle versions that they used quite often. I would hear it myself, and it was really a pleasure. It was a surprise that they're a public broadcaster, and it was very wonderful to hear that. Here he is in retirement with Kermit the Frog, and people asked me what was he like, and some of you knew him. David Brooks just did a book last year called The Road to Character, and I encourage anyone to read it. He talks about how today we are the me-first society, and back then, humility was the trait sought after. And I love your values up here, Donna. And this is, putting others before you. We've seemed to have lost that a lot in our society. So he was very humble, down to earth. He was kind to people. I remember hearing that he was kind to people of all walks of life. He was very much believed in equality. The Southern Poverty Law Center was one of his favorite charities. They do wonderful work. He loved humor, and I think this is what partly saved him from the brink of all the tragedies he had had. And he valued family and friends. Here's a 2000 painting. Dorothy Bausch of Madison painted him while he was volunteering playing at UW Hospital and Clinics. This is after our first year of collecting materials, giving them to the archives. And with David, thank you. I'm going to get to you in a moment. I'm sorry. But we've added a lot more. And we came out last fall with this 4 CD set. I have about 90 copies to give you for anyone who would like it today. If more of we can't give everyone one, but we can get you a copy through the archives to anyone here who would want this. And this is also the public, a lot of it, not all of it, the public music is now available through the American Archive of Public Broadcasting online. And it's repository at the University of Maryland Archives, which is the official repository of National Public Radio. So we were on the brink of losing this stuff, and we had to find it and get it saved. So I want to thank Julie is here. She's been so supportive, my sister. David Null has been just a champion. He welcomed this project. He has been a guiding light throughout it. We talk all the time, and we're working. We have a whole series of additional CDs we've come out with, more of the full collection. And also, Mike Crane has been absolutely wonderful. We're in contact all the time. He's been a big advocate and has taken stuff back to National Public Radio. John Milskowski of Wisconsin Public Television has been very welcoming and supportive. And then I have a special guest, Joyle Holder, here today. And here's the really important thing today. You got to know Joyle. Joyle does phenomenal digital transfer work, especially I was so disappointed in the Twin Cities. We couldn't get any good transfers of film and video. And came down here. We tried it elsewhere on campus. It didn't turn out well. And then I heard through the archives about Joyle. He does first-class work, day and night difference. He cleans the film. He has an extensive IT background with a major accounting firm, and he's been doing this on the side for about 15 years. And he decided last year, I'm going to do this. I'm passionate about this. I'm going to form Holder Printworks. They're out on the west side. And he is a treasure because he really cares. You can't believe the difference in the quality. In fact, our family films, he has one on his Facebook site. You did a Blu-ray version. So we're the first Blu-ray version. So you can see us jumping in a swimming pool in East Lansing, Michigan, the last family film we have. But I encourage you, there's a lot of people in this field, and they do really substandard work. They just churn it out, and you get and he does first-class work. And I've been in connection with the people who do Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. Those films are in Chicago. They're going to New York to get this done. But it's very tricky work, and it takes a lot of passion and redoing. Now, we did the audio stuff. Luckily, I was a teenager. I dubbed a lot of stuff that got lost. But we took we almost did all of our audio up at the Pavic Museum, and then I took it to Minnesota Public Radio for cleanup, and my brother helped, and so on. We did all of the tape stuff 4 times until we felt we got it right. We had to buy more equipment. Just getting the equipment to do this and having calibrated machines is very hard. So be sure to know about Joyle. So if you want to know more, you can Google University Place Don Voegeli. You'll see me and David. We play a lot more jingles, and we have a wonderful dog commercial, and you get to pretend you're writing the music on the first version. And then if you want, we did a pub. Don Voegeli will take you to a podcast. So we're going to end. This is, again, that 2001 photo, and this is him playing piano, a song that he composed for my sister Kim. So we'll fade out. Thank you very much. And if you, should I stay up for questions or? Oh, thank you. So if any of you have a question, I'll try my best. Yeah, hi, Jeff.
Thanks so much for your presentation. Thanks so much for your presentation. I was fortunate enough to have you give me the disc last year, and I listened to it, and it's remarkable what your dad wrote and recorded. I was wondering, he certainly was one of the first to use synthesizers and electronic music, and I was wondering if you know what led him into that. He was a pianist and an excellent pianist and musician. Was it the organ that led him to that? How did he get involved in that?
I think the answer is 2 things. One is that Putney that you saw, and even that early Moog, that was when there had been synthesizers for another 15, 20 years earlier, just experimental things at university. They would take up a whole room. This was the era of the first commercially available synthesizers. But the most important thing, I think, is actually financial. You heard him on the jingles. If they wanted, and you heard him at the end with an orchestral version. If they had money, they would have gone out and recorded with a major orchestra. But it was the new thing. Electronic music was just on the horizon. It was becoming popular. It was controversial because, after all, these are public stations. They're mainly classical music listeners. What the heck's going on here with this, right? So there was controversy, and we have that documented. You'll hear an interview with Susan Stamberg. And but I think it was partly financial. They didn't have money. He was asked to do this theme. There was no budget. So it was the new media. And you heard that little wonderful electronic theme of I love it, the cash register. So he could do marvelous things with that thing. But I think it was just largely a financial thing. Public radio didn't have, it still struggles. And God bless everybody who gives money to it, because it's critically important for us to get truth in the news and other things. And it always struggles. So I think that was a big part of it.
Did I understand you to say that Ken Ost was an engineer at WHA?
No, he was a chief announcer.
Oh, because he did a phenomenal program for many years on American the Great American Songbook. I was wondering, are those tapes still in existence, or have they also been thrown out?
I don't know. I know the Mills Music Library has some of his tapes of music he liked to play. A Gene Krupa recording that actually my father engineered and some things. I don't know what tapes of programs exist. That's a really good question. The tragedy, it's not unique to the University of Wisconsin or National Public Radio. You will find that most institutions are really bad at keeping their history. 3M is terrible. They have thrown away, they remodeled the building, got rid of the History Center. Stuff at the University of Minnesota Historical Society was sent back, and they just, I think, got rid of most of it. So institutions are terrible at keeping their history, and I think it's really great that you at Rotary are doing something now to keep your history of 100 years of music. So.
I'm Nancy Young. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm just most impressed with the gift that you've given to your family, and then to the family of Wisconsin Public Radio and nationwide. It's really a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you. But it's one of those things, it takes a village to raise a family, and I couldn't have done it without David and Mike's and Joyle's help to get, film, video, and music put together. So thank you very much, though. Okay, thank you.
Well, beautiful and lovely indeed. Thank you so much, Julie and Jim, for sharing little snippets of your dad's life with us. We are adjourned.